Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is an annual tradition on the network, one of the last shows of the year. We may sneak in one more to talk about New Year's Day racing at Santa Anita, but one of the last shows of the year, we're going to look back. I'm going to actually fill in my Eclipse Awards ballot during the show, and I've obviously done the work. I've followed all year, but I've always been a huge fan of the way today's guest looks at the Eclipse Awards, has some special techniques that he uses. He's been on these airwaves many times, and it's always a popular visit when we get to talk to the Hall of Famer, Jay Privman. Jay, happy holidays. How are things?
Pete, it's great. Happy holidays to you as well. Still coming off we're recording this the day after the postponed opening day of Santa Anita, which turned out to be just a fantastic day of racing. The weather was great. The racing was great. Terrific crowd. So kind of in the post racing glow of that day here this morning here in Southern California.
I'm such a big fan of tradition, but when you see the energy that seemed to be in that building, I can't help but wonder if some of it was that not only is it during this festive period, but that it was also able to line up with a Sunday. Do you think they might look at that at all, or is Santa Anita opening day going to be the 26th any year it can be just because of that rich tradition?
Yeah, there's two ways of looking at that. Maybe the weekend helped, but this time of year, pro football is a pretty tough thing to go up against.
Good point.
I was worried that they weren't going to get as good a crowd because they were going up against pro football in late December. So the fact that they had that crowd to me was great. They did the right thing by postponing. If they'd have run on the 26th, the weather was just not conducive to that. They'd have been off the turf and with a lot of scratches. So waiting 48 hours was the right thing to do. I think they probably would have had a crowd like that on the Friday if the weather had been exactly the same. It was just such a nice day. I think people just were, wanted to get back outside again, and at least they could watch the football games on their phone, right?
Whatever it was, it certainly all worked out. They were doing beaucoup business. The racing was great, and some potential Eclipse implications here that we'll get to. I say we dive right in. Let's just go through this ballot the way they send it to us. That means starting off with what I imagine is one of the easier decisions for you on the program here as we talk about two-year-old male. But just for academic purposes, they ask us to fill out all three slots. I do believe it's only the first place votes that count, but we might as well talk about a 1, 2, 3 for the fun of it. Any argument against Ted Nafi in this category?
No, none. He's clearly the right horse here. He traveled and won grade ones at 3 different racetracks and beat all the main contenders in the race that matters most at the end of the year. So, he's certainly the clear winner of this category. Like you said, we have to fill out a ballot for the top 3, and that's so that they can have 3 quote unquote finalists, which are really they're not the finalists because it's not a revote. It's just the top 3
Right.
who got votes for the Eclipse Award ceremony. I guess the second and third finishers behind him are the ones that I would probably put on there, Mr. AP and Brandt. Even though Mr. AP didn't have a grade 1 win to his name, he did finish second in the most important race of the year to Ted Nafi, and Brandt was third in that race after coming off his win in the Del Mar Futurity. So that's how I would fill out the ballot. But the second and thirds don't matter here. We know who's winning.
Yes, I think you could tell a story. I don't like the one run in North America horses, but Gstaad is a name that could fill out underneath spots. And I guess if you wanted to get creative and wonder about what might have been had he stayed fully healthy and on the Breeders' Cup Trail, a horse like Napoleon Solo. But I definitely get going with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile as the key piece of form and just copying over those names. 2-year-old filly gets more interesting to me because you have obviously your Breeders' Cup winner in Super Corridora, but is there a story to tell about Cy-Fair as an alternative here, or did you default to the Breeders' Cup, a dirt form for 2-year-old?
No, and this was one of, Pete, we're going to go through several categories here where I really struggle. This to me was one of the, I've been a voter, I've been, very privileged to be an Eclipse Award voter for more than 40 years now. And I found this to be one of the more challenging ballots to fill out. in the cases with the older horses, it's because you had so many interrupted campaigns. In
Yes.
this situation, the 2-year-old filly, it's because you've got two really worthy winners. You can't go wrong to me by going in either direction. Now, you can make a very strong case for Super Corridora. She won going 2 turns, which Cy-Fair didn't. She won the biggest race that we consider to be in North America, the biggest race. It's on dirt, the juvenile fillies, and all the main contenders for the category, bar Cy-Fair, were in this race, right? You
Right.
had Tommy Joe and Percy's Var and Explora, all horses that had accomplished campaigns coming into the race, and Super Corridor beat them all. So that's a really strong resume right there. The case you can make for Cy-Fair, though, is that even though she didn't go 2 turns and she raced exclusively on grass, she beat the boys. And that's a pretty strong feather in her cap. So I don't have any argument with anybody who would vote for Cy-Fair. I haven't filled up my ballot yet. I'm leaning 55-45 to Super Corridora because I just think winning going 2 turns and beating the horses that she beat, all the main contenders, is a slightly better resume. But if somebody came to me and said, I'm voting for Cy-Fair and here's why, I get it.
Yeah, I think it's jump ball, and I'm going to handicap that Super Corridora probably will win for whatever inherent bias there is. It's American racing largely considered dirt racing for good reasons, but maybe for all those reasons, I'm going to cast my top vote here for Cy-Fair, balance it out a little bit. I expect Super Corridora would win. In terms of another name, I feel like those almost, am I right that those two almost have to be 1-2 and then come up with a reason to throw a third in there? I mean, a Corsica Veloce, maybe just, for a different line of form, but I didn't really have anything clever to say about one to stick in there for third. Doesn't seem to matter in this category. That does very much seem like a coin flip between those top two.
I agree. I think that it's the top two, and then it's a long way down to whoever you'd want to give a little nod to for third. I mean, you could even maybe make a case for Valentina, who came over and won the grass race going long for fillies. But the top two are that's who's going to battle it out. It'll be very interesting to see what the final vote ends up being.
Yeah, definitely. Be interesting to see if as many people see it as the toss-up that we do, or if a dirt bias comes in. And I'm not even saying people are necessarily wrong to think of it that way. I just think as racing evolves, I don't have that, I think, as much as I even would have voting when I was able to 5 years ago. And just sort of looking at the form, that victory against Males, the depth and breadth of her. They both had proper, by modern horse standards, campaigns, but yeah, just leaning a little Cy-Fair there. One of the shorter conversations, 3-year-old male.
Yeah, I think this is another one where it's easy to come up with the winner, that being Sovereignty. Certainly he's the standout here. Just to jump ahead of what you would ask, just to fill out the ballot, when you go through the races that he won, who was second and third in those races and what they did elsewhere, it's pretty easy to just put Journalism second and Baeza third to me. I mean, that's the trifecta. It's what we saw in the Derby. It's what we saw in the Belmont Stakes, and I think it's what we should have on our ballot.
That's how I did it, and that's how you did it, and that's where we'll leave that. Though we will take a moment to pause about the breaking news that we saw that Sovereignty going to be back in training. So that is terrific. The delay in hearing that, what we would have thought would have been obvious news, did give a lot of pause to me in the back of my mind, having been around for a minute in this game. Usually when there's uncertainty, that falls the wrong way, but it sure does seem like we're going to get to see him as a 4-year-old, and that's just wonderful news for racing fans. Where do you stand on him? We had Sean Clancy on a couple of weeks ago recapping the year with me, and I love Sovereignty, but I was surprised that he talked about him in terms of one of the best horses he'd seen like ever. I mean, he went over the top. Do you share his enthusiasm for Sovereignty and what he might be able to accomplish as a 4-year-old?
Yeah, I want to see what he can do as a 4-year-old, but in terms of what he did this year, that was as good a campaign, as we've seen, it was well spaced, it was well managed. But when he ran, he was brilliant. I was at the Belmont Stakes. I happened to be near the top of the stretch watching the race, and when they came off the turn, Pete, journalism was rolling, and I thought, oh wow, he's gonna beat him this time. And Sovereignty ran him down with an incredible final quarter mile. It was and won by daylight. It was a magnificent performance, and the only unfortunate thing was I would have loved to have seen him run in the Classic against those really good older horses, and unfortunately he had a setback and couldn't do it. And they did the right thing, but it is nice to see that he's going to be racing as a 4-year-old. To me, they were kind of telegraphing that he was going to race as a 4-year-old because they never put out a stud fee for him, and when
Right.
they don't do that by early December, that kind of tells you he's not going to stud.
Right. You knew they wanted to. I was just worried. You know how it is. You just worry something's going to go. They get scared of a hot dog wrapper or something, and then just pull a muscle, and then that's it. These horses
Right.
they're just so fragile at the end of the day. But that is great and welcome news. Let's pivot to the 3-year-old filly category, one where maybe there's a little bit of an interesting discussion to have. Or did you? I ended up going with Nitrogen, but I thought about it for a bit.
Yeah, and I did as well, and I thought about it for a bit as well. But one of the things I really like about Nitrogen is that she had a full year's campaign. And even though she didn't win her last 2 races, I mean, she was narrow. They were both against older horses, and she ran well in both those races, and she beat any other 3-year-old filly that were in those races. The only horses who beat her in those last 2 races were both older mares,
Right.
with Scylla and Jinjin. So, and the versatility that she showed to win, to start the year on grass, then to move to dirt, win the biggest dirt race of the summer in the Alabama. That's a heck of a campaign. And she ran 9 times, which that's a lot in this era. We're going to be talking later on about horses who ran twice that might be in the conversation for Eclipse Awards. So she had a proper campaign, and she will get my vote. The others who I looked at here to round out the ballot, Pete, were Good Cheer, who won the Oaks, and I didn't think finished off her year quite as well, but was certainly the best of the division, maybe early on. And then I'm going to give a nod here to Shisospicy, who you could put her in 3 different categories. You could put her here for 3-year-old filly. You could put her for turf filly, and you could put her for sprint female. She's a Swiss Army knife in terms of this ballot, and she beat males in the Breeders' Cup. So she's going to get a vote for me in this category, but not the top vote. It goes to Nitrogen.
Yeah, ultimately, I was almost wanting to, just because I was surprised at how impressed I was with She's So Spicy, gave her that element of surprise, elevation, ultimately went with Nitrogen. But what a year. You talk about a full campaign starting on January 4, going through November 1, taking the overseas trip, which, I think that straight 6 at Ascot just wasn't able to see her to her best effect. Didn't have the stamina for that straight 6 with the uphill finish. But every other race, a doozy, won over 2 million. And like you say, we'll have other opportunities to talk about her and her attributes as this ballot continues on here. And the next category, let me see if I have this correct. Yes, we are up to older dirt male. So this is one where if you're a huge Nisos fan, maybe you want to point to action over the weekend of why you could give him a vote on top of this ballot. For me, still not enough to pass what we saw this year from Sierra Leone. Where do you stand with the older dirt male category?
Well, you and me have a pretty different view of this category, but I think it shows what a wide open category this is, because I'm not going to have Sierra Leone in my top 3.
Interesting.
And he's your top horse. That's no knock on Sierra Leone, but I think it shows how unsatisfying this category is in terms of somebody stepping up and dominating. Nisos, he won the Pinkai yesterday. It's a grade 2, but he beat a grade 1 winner in Nevada Beach, and Nisos did win the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Unfortunately for him, he had a setback at a really key time for him in the middle of the year when he was pointing for the Pacific Classic, couldn't run in that race. There wasn't enough time to get him ready for the Breeders' Cup Classic, so he ran in the Dirt Mile and he won that. But the only race he lost was coming off a 1-year plus layoff in what was maybe the race of the year in terms of quality of horses in that Churchill Downs 7 Ace race.
And he ran great.
And he ran fantastic. But the horse who beat him in that race, Mindframe, had a really sneaky good campaign. And I think you could make a very strong case for him in this category. He won the Churchill Downs. He came back and won the Stephen Foster. You can't hold the Jockey Club Gold Cup against him. That's when Irad got knocked off of him in that, crazy start.
Roughly right.
And then he just didn't see out the 1.25 miles in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I don't think 1.25 miles is his ideal distance, and he just couldn't stay. But you can make a strong case for him, and I think Forever Young's going to get a lot of support, even though he only ran once in this country. But he won what was maybe the race of the year. When you get Sierra Leone and Fierceness coming back again, and Forever Young, to have the top 3 from the previous year's Breeders' Cup Classic take the top 3 spots again, that's an amazing accomplishment.
Really.
And this horse, ran in Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Japan, and then he comes over here and wins. He wins 3 out of 4, but he only ran once in this country, and that's something that I think you have to take into consideration. But I don't have a problem with anybody who would vote for him. But though, for me, Pete, those 3 all had superior campaigns to Sierra Leone. So I'm very intrigued as to your Sierra Leone opinion here.
I think it has to do with the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, I think I was just really impressed with that run. I felt like with any luck at all, he could have won that race. I mean, I guess you're not really supposed to think that way when it comes to awards, right? It should be more just about straight up accomplishments on the track. I looking through it, I felt like his body of work, and I'll just pull it up here to make sure I can have the synapses fire in the same way when I wrote it down here a minute ago. But I just felt like he was he did enough for me and had a campaign that had this great peak effort. And I had a real inability to vote for Forever Young off of the one race. Tell me if I'm wrong. I will only do the one race thing if I feel like I do not have another choice. Is that?
No, I'm of that mind too. If there's not a better choice, like last year, for instance, with Rebels Romance winning the the Breeders' Cup Turf, I think there was nobody else who had stepped up, and he was like, well, all right,
you got it.
So I'm kind of in the same mindset of you, Pete. The thing that you're saying with Sierra Leone, this is sort of a philosophical thing. I think oftentimes when we look at stuff like you're saying, Sierra Leone overcame a track that I think most people thought was against late runners at Del Mar that day. So maybe you're taking that into consideration, and I don't have a problem with that. But are we handicapping this field, or are we looking at their overall resume for the year? And if you do that, I think the Stephen Foster, where Mindframe beat Sierra Leone, to me would give Mindframe an edge over Sierra Leone in that head-to-head context.
And it's interesting. I view the Whitney also as a grade 1 plus. So yeah. I think I'm looking at that, and then I'm looking at the no shot trip in the Jockey Club Gold Cup and the against it in the Classic. And I'm saying, I guess I am handicapping a little. I'm saying I think this is the best horse, and I don't want to vote for Forever Young. I guess I'm holding the Classic against Mindframe, fair or not. And I think that's how I landed on that opinion. But I think there's stories to tell about all 4 of these runners, really.
Yeah, there's nobody who stands out here. And it, like I was saying when we started this conversation, there are a number of categories like this where you can go in several different directions, and you're not really going to be wrong. It's just a matter of what grabs your attention. But it's because nobody really stood out from overall the 12 months of the year and dominated a category. And this is one of them where that is applicable.
It's a fun discussion. I mean, Mindframe he's the only one that has the 2 grade ones, right? I mean, I think your case for him is strong off that. But then you look at things like Money, which is obviously going to give a huge lift to the classic, and that's going to put Sierra to the head of the class. I guess it is. I'm looking at it again. I guess it is. It's hard for me to put Nysos, looking at it more, ahead of either of those runners, really.
Mhm.
But I guess what he has is just tremendous consistency, if you want to value that. So I guess that's where that would come from. Who had, even with the interruption, by modern thoroughbred standards, when you're just looking at the PP cut of Nysos, there ain't much this horse did wrong, other than maybe not run in all the best races.
No, and he had a good campaign, and he came off the layoff and ran well. Mindframe, he won that race. He beat Nysos in that race at Churchill Downs, which turned out to be just a tremendous field, right? I mean, Bookham Dana was in there. Yeah. Nysos was in there. So to win going 7-ace like he did, and then come back and win the Stephen Foster, he's a proper horse. And then, he didn't get his chance in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. And then, like I was saying, I think the Classic, they had to go in that race. The Breeders' Cup Mile doesn't do anything for Mindframe. Dirt Mile doesn't do anything for Mindframe's, campaign. And I thought they had to run in the Classic. I just don't think a 1.25 is ideal for him. But it's hard. I mean, there's nobody here who's a satisfying, like, yeah, he's the one kind of horse.
It's fun to have a legitimate 4-way vie. I mean, I could see someone who's completely Breeders' Cup centric saying, dudes, what are you talking about? Forever Young.
Yeah,
that's not unreasonable to me. It's just not how I look at the world. But that's definitely one of the funner discussions we've gotten to have over the years, looking at these Eclipse ballots. Let's talk about older dirt female. This one I thought was, at points in the year, looked like it was going to be Thorpedo Anna's to lose. Where did you end up? What did you end up doing with your 1, 2, 3?
This is funny, going back to what we were just talking about sort of handicapping the field. Like if all the top contenders in this field ran against each other at their best, I think Cavalieri is the best horse in this group.
Wow, that's interesting.
But she did not have a campaign, to me, that is worthy of being an Eclipse Award winner. So
a couple races, right?
She ran 3 times.
3 times.
She's brilliant, but not enough of a resume. When I sat down to first do this category, I did not think I would end up where I ended up. But I ended up with Thorpedo Anna. I just think her overall body of work is the best of this group for the year. She started off in March in the Azeri. She won the Apple Blossom, which is a grade 1. She ran that stinker in the La Troyenne when she got bounced around and just didn't fire. But then she comes back from that, wins the Fleur de Lis, wins the Personal Ensign in a terrific race against Darth Vader, and then again in the Spinster just doesn't show up. And they knew at that point, like, okay, she's telling us she's done. But she was 4 for 6. She had a couple of grade 1 wins. And I just think if you look at her overall body of work, it's superior to, for instance, let's say Scylla, who was the Breeders' Cup winner and won dynamically, but that was her only win of the year. Is that enough to put her in the top spot? For me, not really. Seismic Beauty was the favorite in the distaff, and I think if she'd have won the race, she would have been the Eclipse Award winner coming out of her win in the Clement Hirsch, but she stumbled badly at the start, and it was just awful. She finished next to last in the race because Juan Hernandez just basically eased her because it was a hopeless cause after she stumbled as badly as she did at the start. And then you can look at a horse maybe like Jinjin, who won the Spinster and beat the horse that you and I think should be the 3-year-old filly champ, Nitrogen, and in which Thorpedo Anna finished 4th in her career finale. So, you could certainly make a case, I think, for Jinjin in that context, but Thorpedo Anna beat her in the Fleur de Lis. So that kind of cancels each other out. So that's a long way of me saying that as I went round and round in this category, when I finally looked at just sort of the overall body of work, I ended up on Thorpedo Anna, and I did not think that's where I was going to end up, but that's who I'm going to vote for.
When you first asked that question about on their best day, if we're talking
Yeah.
about their whole career, not just 2025, I mean, I think that answer then becomes Thorpedo Anna based on her very best races from last year too. So there are a lot of arrows pointing in her direction. I had a little knee jerk to want to give it to Scylla based on having grade one placings and then winning the Breeders' Cup, but I think that might be too Breeders' Cup centric of a view. And then if you want to bring handicapping into it at all, she was definitely flattered by that racetrack. I don't know. It is tough to vote against the Thorpedo Anna. We have also seen this award given in some past years as a lifetime achievement award. So handicapping who is going to win it, I think it will be Thorpedo Anna. And I'm not sure I'm not just going to go ahead and vote for her. I haven't clicked the button yet, but you make a really compelling case. But this is another one where you can have some fun going back and forth between those. But I'm leaning towards Thorpedo at the moment. Male sprinter. This is another one where Breeders' Cup bona fides for some might lead them to Ben Tornado, but didn't Bookham Dano have the best campaign? Where did you land with male sprinter?
So I'm gonna come with one that you might not. I might have telegraphed this a couple categories ago, but so Ben Tornado was he was brilliant in the Breeders' Cup. His race was amazing, but can you give him off just the 2 runs? I don't know. That's just not quite enough.
It's not a campaign.
Bookham Dano had a terrific year. His only grade 1 win was in the Forgo. When you drill down on who he was beating, Milliken, Scotland, Nakatomi, those horses were really not exactly the ones that at the end of the year were considered the top in the division. So I think Bookham Dano might be his races were excellent. He won 3 times at Saratoga, but I think the depth of who he was beating might be slightly dressed up. I circle back to Mindframe. I think he won the best sprint of the year. To me, the Churchill Downs, the 7-ace race on that card, on that Derby card, that was the best sprint field of the year. Nysos came out of that race. Bookham Dano came out of that race. Mindframe beat all those horses. He won twice around 1 turn. Now, granted, the Gulfstream Park Mile is a 1-turn mile. It's not really a pure sprint. But I'm actually going to vote for Mindframe here. And I think a lot of this is because I think he deserves an Eclipse Award for the versatility that he showed. And if I can't quite get him home in the older male category, I think this might be the right place to try and give him a little bit of love. So, and a lot of it is because Ben Tornado might be the best sprinter. I can't give a 2-race campaign over a horse like Mindframe who ran from March to November.
And I mean, Dano, to me, in my looking at what I look for in voting, I got to put Dano ahead of Ben Tornado. Is Patch Adams disqualified despite 2 grade 1 wins because he never raced against his elders?
Yeah, I can't give restricted grade 1s the same level of consideration as 3 and up grade 1. So to me, the point you made is exactly why he's just not even in the conversation for me, winning 2 races that were restricted to 3-year-olds.
This is an interesting one. I mean, we've been talking about these in terms of who we think should win and who we are going to vote for. Handicapping the electorate, is there a chance they just default to Breeders' Cup and give it? I mean, is Ben Tornado the favorite despite everything we're saying about not being thrilled with him?
Probably, and the only reason I'm not "quote unquote" thrilled with him would be because he only ran 2 times. I'm thrilled with him as a performer. His race in the Breeders' Cup was sensational, and I can't argue with somebody who says I'm voting for Ben Tornado because he won the race that you're supposed to win. I just would like to see somebody who ran more. But his brilliance is unquestionable.
Female sprinter is a fun category. I think we've talked about both of our affection for Shisospicy, and that's the way that I'm leaning here. But I'm sure Splendora will have supporters, and I think there might be some other cases one could make. What did you do with the female sprinter category?
Yeah, this was another one where I again I ended up somewhere where I didn't think I was going to end up when I first sat down with it. and again, this is because there's just not a satisfying whole campaign here. Splendora is going to get some votes when she won the Breeders' Cup race that matters most for the division. Shisospicy, we addressed earlier. She's terrific, and I have no problem with anybody who votes for her here. And I think this is the most logical place if you're going to vote for Shisospicy for an Eclipse Award. This is the category where you can make the best case for her because of the long campaign that she had of beating males, etc. I ended up going with Copion. And this sort of goes back to what I was talking about with Mindframe a little bit ago, Pete. To me, the Derby City Distaff was the best sprint race of the year for this division. This is who Copion obliterated in that race. Hope Road came back and later on won a Grade 1 race. Ways and Means came back and later on won a Grade 1 race. Positano Sunset, who had already won a Grade 1 race. Vava, who won a Grade 1 race. And earlier in the year, in the Santa Monica, Copion happened to beat Splendora, who won the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint at the end of the year. To me, they got away from Copion. Copion, to me, was mismanaged at the end of the year. She should have been in the Filly and Mare Sprint. I think she'd have had a big chance in the Filly and Mare Sprint. You might remember Spendthrift decided to split up Copion and Tamara.
Yep.
They put Tamara in the Filly and Mare Sprint, and then she ended up not being able to run because she was withdrawn by the vets. Copion ends up running against the boys, going 6 furlongs, which is a furlong short of best for her. She draws the rail. I mean, she was really, really up against it.
Yeah.
In that race. But I think if you go back and look at what she did earlier in the year, to me, she was the best female sprinter of the year, and she won the best female sprint race. To me, the Derby City Distaff was miles better than what the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint field ended up being. Yep. And so that's why I defaulted to Copion. To me, if somebody votes for Shisospicy here, I get that, and I wouldn't put up much of a fuss. But those to me are the right two. I'm gonna go for Copion.
A couple of really interesting tangents, I think, off of here. One is about your process, which I like the fact that, you know, we talk about Grade 1s, we talk about Grade 1 pluses. And I like the work that you're doing where you're not letting the racing calendar just dictate the Grade 1 pluses, Oaks, Breeders' Cup. You're looking at the actual fields, the accomplishments of those runners in the field. And, you know, not every year is the Derby City Distaff a Grade 1 plus, but this year it certainly was. And right. I like the intellectual exercise of giving extra points in that situation. And my next one is just an aside on Copion. Are we sure she's not better going even longer still? I feel like this decision was made after the Hirsch to cut her back, when I thought, when you consider what I would say was the no-shot trip she got in there with the 107 Beyer speed figure, wouldn't be certain she would have won, or at least looked really good in the Distaff as well. She could have run in 3 races. I think she would have had a better shot in the 2 that she didn't go in than the one they put her in. Hopefully she stays in training and we can see what she's fully capable of, because I agree with you. She's special, and I understand why you're putting her there, but I think I'm going to go with my gut there of Shisospicy. But do you know what the plans are for Copion?
I don't. I was just thinking of that right now when you mentioned that. I haven't seen anything regarding her not going on, so I hope she's staying in training, but I don't know that for certain. I saw where Tamara just breezed the other day at Santa Anita, so I know she's still still around, and they're going to get her to a race hopefully soon, but I don't know what the plans are with Copion.
Male turf horse. This is an interesting one. We talked about Rebel's Romance and what we did with him last year. Ethical Diamond didn't make the same kind of impression on me. And then, as much as I'm not that interested in giving a horse a 1 race campaign, does that second Grade 1, that notable speech one, make him the selection for you in the male turf horse category, or did you decide to get creative?
No, well, I guess the answer is yes and yes, based on how you outlined that. But I'm fine with notable speech. To me, this is a jump ball. Notable speech with the 2 Grade 1s and winning one of them being a Breeders' Cup race. That's a terrific resume. but I'm gonna. This is a hard category for me, but I may be giving this to Deterministic, who won 2 grade 1s and unfortunately couldn't see the year out at the end of the year. But he won the Manhattan in June. He came back and won the 4-star Dave, cutting back to a mile after winning twice, going a mile and an eighth in the Fort Marcy at Aqueduct, and then winning the Manhattan the weekend of the Belmont Stakes. So this is there's so, like we were saying, this is sort of a theme this year. There's just so many categories where there's not a satisfying obvious answer in so many of these categories. And this is yet another one of those, Pete, where for me, after looking at all the qualifications of the different contenders here, to me, it's a jump ball between Deterministic and Notable Speech. They're the best of a really difficult group to get your arms around.
Those would be the top two for me as well. It is just a shame. I mean, Deterministic's campaign ending August 2nd, but on credentials, the 2 grade 1s, over $1 million earned. I mean, that's going to put him in rare company. That combination of attributes, but it is hard for me to deny. I mean, I guess Notable Speech has the same 2 grade 1s and then has the 1.8 million. I'm probably gonna reflex to Notable Speech off that, but Deterministic was the second one I had in the category, and a horse that certainly deserves to be a finalist and deserves a shout out on a show such as this. In terms of other ones to put up there, I suppose Ethical Diamond will be a finalist just off that. I guess if you win a Breeders' Cup race, you're pretty much going to be a finalist for Eclipse. I'm sure there are rare exceptions to that, but none leap to mind.
I think Rebels Romance will get some votes. You could, Spirit of St. Louis won a couple of grade 1s early in the year and then went off form. But he might get some support. But I think Notable Speech is going to end up winning because he's got that Breeders' Cup win, and those are significant wins. And he's got, as we were saying, he's got the second other grade 1 in North America to support that. So I think he's the most likely winner in this category. But I think Deterministic deserves a really strong level of consideration in here.
I agree. Am I correct that the rules specifically state not to look at the foreign races of a runner like Notable Speech?
No, it does not. You're allowed to take that into consideration.
Okay. Well,
if you think that that's something that can help or hinder a horse's chances, but there's no language in the voting material that says you are not to consider races overseas or words to that effect.
That would make it a little bit easier for me to go Notable Speech just with that. That did everything but win in the Marbois, and just hard trying efforts against some of the best turf horses in the world, and then those 2 North American wins. But I wouldn't argue with the determined. I like the Deterministic case as a contrarian view, and like you said, a horse who definitely deserves plaudits, flowers, whatever you want to call them. Let's move on to female turf horse, another one where I'm going to have Shisospicy among my 3, but not at the top. Where did you go here?
Yeah, she's second for me here. Again, I hope she wins an Eclipse Award in some division, and female sprint might, even though I'm voting for Copion, if Shisospicy wins here, I won't have a problem with it, because to me, she's one of the best 2 for female sprinter, 3-year-old filly, and female turf.
Agreed.
She's going to be second for me in this category to She Feels Pretty. I have no problem voting for She Feels Pretty. 3 wins and 2 seconds and 5 starts, a narrow defeat in the Breeders' Cup, a grade 1 win in the New York, a grade 1 win in the EP Taylor. To me, she had the best overall form of anybody in this category. And even though she got beat in the Breeders' Cup, it was a narrow defeat. She ran great in the race. And I think if you look at the overall body of work, she's the right one.
You and I are in lockstep here. And just for filling out ballot purposes, feels like a runner like Gazora you could throw in there without feeling too bad. Anybody else who you wanted to highlight in that category?
No, I think those are the right 3. Absolutely. And this was another category where you had so many one-off type horses in here, like Excellent Truth or, Dynamic Pricing. They all won like a grade 1 race, even, AG Bullet earlier in the year beating the boys in the Jaipur. But I think for overall body of work, She Feels Pretty and She's So Spicy are the right two. And I think you're right. I think Gazora is the right horse to throw in for third on the ballot. Of just, she deserves a little bit of acknowledgement.
We've talked at length on other shows about the steeplechase category. And tell me if I'm paraphrasing this incorrectly. When you feel like it's clear and obvious, you're happy to make a vote in this category, but you have abstained in years where you felt like you didn't have all the knowledge. Am I characterizing that correctly? And which way did you feel this way?
You characterized that correctly. I'm going to go on a little bit of a soapbox rant here, Pete.
Please. We love those.
Yeah. The ballot that was sent out to voters is messed up, and messed is my polite way of putting this. I'd use a stronger word, but this is
you can on these airwaves, but there are
this show is for, well, I'll leave that for JK. But this is really messed up. I mean, it's messed up, and I'll tell you what's messed up. Every ballot is supposed to have all grade 1 winners. There are 7 grade 1 steeplechase races. One of them is the AP Smithwick. And the horse who won that race is Historic Heart. Historic Heart is not listed in the past performances that are in the ballot that's sent out to voters. That's inexcusable. 2 horses that Historic Heart beat in that race, who won other grade 1s, are on the ballot, Jimmy P and Proven Innocent. That can't happen. And it's now happened twice in 10 years. This happened in 2016 as well. There was a horse who, and I can't remember the horse's name right now, but it was a horse who won the Smithwick in 2016, beat a couple of horses who were on the ballot, and was left off the ballot. That cannot happen. So guess who I'm going to vote for because of that? That's right. I'm voting for Historic Heart. And it's my understanding that the National Steeplechase Association supplies the horses that are put into the supplementary material for voters. Shame on them. This can't happen. And it
what
did.
Do they have against the Smithwick to leave it out twice in 10
years? Anyway, I'm voting for Historic Heart. I feel bad. I don't know. I don't follow the steeplechase races closely. I don't know who the connections are to Historic Heart. I feel bad for them. They shouldn't have been put in this position. It's inexcusable. But I know Historic Heart, even though Historic Heart's not on the ballot and should be, will get at least one vote for an Eclipse Award steeplechase champion. So that's who I'm voting for.
All right. Now I'm realizing I thought I was up to speed on this, and I was going to make my case for Cool Jet, but now I'm back to the drawing board in the steeplechase category. But that is very, very strange stuff. I mean, so I get it. If they're supposed to supply the information, clearly it's on the NSA. But would this be? I mean, this must be a known issue for our friends who send us the ballots, etc. What? Any ideas?
Let me just say that this morning, last night, when I started really drilling down on this, and I noticed this, I did send off a note to someone who's involved in the process saying, is there a reason this horse isn't on here? And then I went back, and my memory was that, I was on the committee that put the ballot together before I retired, going back several years ago. And my memory was that this happened before. And so I went through my voluminous files here at home. And yes, as I was just saying, I just went and I looked it up here because I had written it down. It was in 2016. It was a horse named Bob LeBeau who had won the Smithwick, left off the ballot. There were 2 horses who Bob LeBeau had beaten, who had won other grade 1s, who were on the ballot. So this has happened now twice in 10 years. It's inexcusable. There's just no excuse for this happening.
It's flabbergasting. I'm very curious what the logic could possibly be, and I think I might make
It's
an
probably just
inquiry
an
about that.
oversight. I don't think there's any logic to it. I think somebody just messed up. But I mean, there's 7 Grade 1 races. It's not that hard. I'm going to do it right now, Pete. Watch me count to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Not that hard.
Not that hard indeed. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to like go through my brain. Is it? But it's not. I was going to say, is it restricted in some way? But if it's a grade 1, it's a grade 1. Our grade 1s for 3-year-olds were in all the others, so it's not.
I mean, the Smithwick at Saratoga. I mean, even I know that's one of the biggest steeplechase races of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big race. You can't leave that horse off the ballot, the winner of that race. Sorry, but here we are, a couple days before ballots are due.
Yeah, we'll have to further research required. We'll see what we can find out in case there is some logical explanation. And if it's an oversight, hopefully there won't be oversighted in the future. I mean, that's the point of making rants on podcasts. You can sometimes shame people into doing the right thing going forward, or perhaps uncover a reason why something happened that isn't obvious to the likes of us.
As Bill Belichick used to say when he actually, had a team of people that could win for him, do your job.
Yeah. Let's move on to owner. And this is one where for years we've talked about how the information that we get sent as voters isn't necessarily all the information you'd want. And I love your technique for trying to isolate maybe some better criteria for what the winners should be in these human categories. Let's start with owner. What did you see when you sat down and looked at this one?
So what I like to do, Pete, is, as you know, but for listeners who might be new to my sort of approach to this, is I like to do a spreadsheet for each horse that I consider to be an Eclipse champion who's going to get my vote, or if it's a category where it was a jump ball, I'll put them both down, and I'll list the name of the horse, who the jockey was, who the trainer was, who the owner was, and who the breeder was, because I'm looking for commonality at the top level, because that's to me what the Eclipse Awards for owner, breeder, you should be rewarding those who had success among at the top. And Godolphin is always going to get a lot of support here because they're going to have the horse of the year, I think, in Sovereignty, right? So they're going to get a lot of support in that regard. And obviously, we were talking about Notable Speech as being a pretty strong candidate for an Eclipse Award there as well. So a divisional win with Sovereignty, probably horse of the year, a potential divisional win with Notable Speech. You give them a lot of support. But there's a couple others here, Pete, who I think deserve a lot of consideration here. Spendthrift campaigned Ted Nafi. They also campaigned Copion, who, as I was saying, is going to get my vote for female sprinter. So I give them a big push here, and that's probably where I'm going to go. The other I'm going to give some love to here is St. Elias Stable, which is Vinny Viola's stable name. But in partnership, he campaigned both Deterministic and Mindframe, who collectively won 4 Grade 1 races. And that's also a very significant campaign. So I think I'm going to vote for Spendthrift in this category. I've got another one where I think Godolphin's a better choice, but for owner, I'm going to go for Spendthrift, and I think I'm going to put St. Elias second and Godolphin third.
Is there any element of Godolphin fatigue in putting them third, because they are in this perennially? I mean, just based on the ridiculous numbers and the fact that you have potentially 2 Eclipse champions.
I mean, potentially, but I'm going to give them, like I was just alluding to, I'm going to give them love in the breeder. So they'll get theirs. They'll get their flowers.
Look at their flowers.
Exactly.
It's where. I like it. I mean, I think it's very, very logical. I think that's a great point about Spendthrift and St. Elias. Well, let's move right on to breeder then, and walk us through your thought process here.
So the 2 that Godolphin had the most success with as owners are homebreds, and that's different from when I was talking about with St. Elias and Spendthrift. Spendthrift had 1 homebred in Ted Nafi, but or excuse me, their horses were not homebred, right? Copion and Ted Nafi were their 2, but they're they're not both homebred is the way I wanted to state that, but clumsily didn't at the outset here. Uh, Godolphin, though, both of theirs are homebreds, Sovereignty and Notable Speech. And so for that, to me, they get the nod over Ted Nafi was bred by Aaron and Marie Jones. Copion was, again, neither of those horses are bred by Spendthrift. So, and the two that I mentioned for St. Elias, Mindframe and Deterministic, neither of those are homebreds. Godolphin's two are both homebreds. So this is where, to me, Godolphin makes sense. With homebred champions, give them breeder. They're going to be breeding, it looks like, the horse of the year, right? Because Sovereignty will be horse of the year. So to me, even if there's Godolphin fatigue, they deserve it here, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're very likely to just win both, fatigue or no. Who did you fill out the breeder ballot with? Sometimes, some years you've come up with some interesting ones, just at least to give some props to on the show.
Yeah, I haven't yet, but I'm leaning towards putting Larry Johnson, the unfortunately now late Larry Johnson, second. He bred Mindframe,
Yep.
and he had a great career. So I think he deserves acknowledgement, and so I would probably vote for him. And then maybe Aaron and Marie Jones. It's now just Marie Jones. Aaron has passed, but Aaron and Marie Jones for Ted Nafi. And you could even give DJ Stable some love. They had a homebred in Nitrogen who we think should be the 3-year-old filly champion. And to me, when you have a homebred champion, that goes a long ways. And that which is why with Godolphin having two of those, I think they deserve the Eclipse Award in this category. But to round out the ballot, it'll be two of the three that I just mentioned.
What do you look for in the jockey category mainly?
Success at the top. And this year it's what a battle between Irad Ortiz and Flavian Pratt. They're virtually inseparable on earnings. They've both gone over 40 million won by their mounts. Nobody's ever done that before, and they both did it this year. It's incredible. Irad's won more races overall, but he had far more mounts.
Yep.
When it comes to graded stakes, Pratt has more graded stakes wins. He's got more grade 1 stakes wins for the year. But Irad is on more horses who look like they have the potential to be Eclipse Award winners. Horses like Mindframe, Ben Tornado, Shisospicy. Pratt was not the regular rider on horses who, a large number of horses who look like they're going to win Eclipse Awards. To me, you can't go wrong with either of them. They're far and away the two best riders in the country this year. Pratt won last year. I think Irad had won 85 times consecutively prior to that. So maybe there's some Irad fatigue that'll set in. But, I like both these guys a lot as riders. And even though I think Pratt had maybe a better year overall in terms of graded stakes and grade 1s, when you look at what Irad did with horses who are going to be the Eclipse Award winners, it's like 51-49 Irad right now for me. But there's still a few more days to go for me to consider this. This is really hard. I wish this is one where I wish there could be co-champions, because to me they both deserve it, but you can only vote for one.
Yeah, no wrong answers there for sure. And that your special sauce of looking at the champions, though, that's interesting. I was pretty convinced based on the graded stakes stuff and some of the just not so well, it's a tangible accomplishment winning 7 in a row at Aqueduct. But I was leaning Pratt for some of that stuff, but the Eclipse point is a really good one that's going to make me maybe go back to the drawing board.
I mean, you could play devil's advocate there and go like, boy, look at Pratt. He won 13 grade 1s and he had to be moving around, and because his horses were getting sidelined, and he still put together a campaign where he won more grade 1s than Irad. Even Johnny V finished second in grade 1s. He had more than Irad. So there's two different ways of looking at this. There's no wrong answer to me between Pratt or Irad Ortiz.
What's your general view on apprentice jock? If I remember right, this is similar to steeplechase. You'd do it if it was obvious, but not when you always participate in.
Yeah, I wish this category didn't exist. I don't like it. We don't have a first-year trainer award.
Right.
I know it's fun, but you look back at who won, and there's some hits, but there's a lot of misses in terms of how people did subsequent to winning this award. This year, it looks like there's a couple of decent candidates, and the Hazelwood has just been phenomenal on a good circuit in Maryland. And his win percentage and earnings per start are vast superior to Pietro Moran, who is the leader in terms of purse earnings this year. So I think I'm actually going to vote this year, and I'm going to vote for Hazelwood.
Yeah, I mean, and I would throw in, just as a rider who's really impressed me, is one wouldn't put on top, but would be happy to have among the names. The work we've seen from Chris Elliott has been extremely impressive too. This is where it gets hard. Like, there's circuits you cover and then people you deal with, and my reflex was to just go Moran, just because I've been really impressed, and the money is huge. And he's just great, covering Woodbine day in, day out. But this is another tough one. I think it's a year to vote, because I think there's, at least 2, if not 3 people I'd be very happy to see get the award. So yeah, that's my inclination as far as the Apprentice jock goes. Do you know what's the history of it? Why did this award? What's the sort of stated purpose of the award?
It's been there from the beginning. I think it's kind of like Rookie of the Year in baseball or something like that. But I just think with I don't know. To me, it's past its sell-by date.
Maybe it helps. Maybe it helps riders, along in their careers, even. And this is one where maybe even being a finalist, you get noticed a little within the industry. I don't have the loathing for it that you seem to, but I do think some years I feel just utterly unqualified to vote in it.
Loathing might be too strong a word, but strong dislike is fair.
Ambivalence. We'll go with ambivalence.
Very well.
Let's talk trainers. Is there any beating Brad Cox in the year he had?
Oh yeah, he's not getting my vote. I know he won the most money, but tell me who his best horse was and who he's going to win an Eclipse Award with.
Right.
The answer is no one.
It's not. It doesn't look as pretty.
No. So I mean, he had a great year in terms of purse earnings, but if we're rewarding champions, it's not him. Sorry. The better candidates are out there, including obviously Mott, who's going to have the horse of the year. May have another champion in Scylla, maybe not. Interestingly, those are the only 2 horses he won Grade 1 races with. Our Sovereignty and Scylla. That's it.
Interesting.
But he had a great year.
I think it's okay, though, isn't it? I mean, especially if you're looking at it through the sort of pyramid lens of the champions.
Yes.
You can have having 1.5 of those, including a horse of a year, for somebody who is so respected and, I mean, is the sire of a trainer who had a Grade 1 winner. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons why I'd be very happy to cast a vote for Bill Mott, number 1.
Absolutely. No, I have no problem voting for Bill Mott. I'm telling you, in the context of how you posited this category, there are much better candidates for me than Brad Cox, and that's no knock on Brad. I mean, he had a great year, but he doesn't have the horses at the top level who are going to be getting Eclipse Awards. There's none. So Mott, to me, is a better potential choice. Todd Pletcher is a better potential choice. 10 Grade 1 wins. Including potential Eclipse Award winner Mindframe and obvious Eclipse Award winner Ted Nafi.
Yep.
So those are better candidates. Bob Baffert had a great year as well. He had more graded wins than anybody else. He had more Grade 1 wins than Mott or Pletcher. He tied with Chad Brown and Todd Pletcher for most Grade 1 wins. So that's, those are, to me, 3 better candidates than Brad Cox.
Where do you stand on this issue? Speaking of Baffert and Grade 1s, where do you stand on this issue of some of these Grade 1s in California that are being downgraded in status? Is this is it the job of the graded stakes committee to worry about California's standing as a jurisdiction and how important it is to racing as a whole, or is it their job to just look at the fields and make assessments based on the horses who show up in certain races?
Yeah, I think they need to make assessments based on who shows up in certain racings. I would just question whether their methodology is correct overall, because when you see races like the Franklin Simpson getting a grade 1 designation. Now I know they've rescinded that. It's dropping down to a grade 2 for next year, but it went from nothing to grade 1 and had a couple of winners that are not grade 1 horses. So, I think the methodology that they use, I know they always say like, well, that's what the numbers say, and therefore this is it. Well, maybe your numbers are off.
Right.
Uh,
Franklin Simpson didn't make sense. The older turf sprint there should have been the grade 1.
Yeah, maybe, but I'm just using that as an example. Like, you can't justify that being a grade 1. So I'm using that in the context of, let's get back to the question you asked regarding the California horses, or California races. I don't know that they need to be propping things up just to prop them up, but I would question if the methodology is correct. Because when you look at, like, the Kilroe Mile got downgraded, and I would argue that should not have happened. Formidable Man was the most recent winner of the race, right? He finished second in Notable Speech in the Breeders' Cup, and he had a terrific campaign, and the depth of the field was good. So it's hard for me to see how you justify downgrading. I'm just using that as one example. Yeah. Whatever numbers the graded stakes committee is using, I think they need to go back and look at sort of the methodology that they use, because I think they're missing on some things here. But I don't think that they should just be propping something up for the sake of saying we need to prop it up. That, to me, would impugn the integrity of the process.
Yeah, and I would say this: I'm all for the idea that as California goes, so goes the industry in the U.S. And there probably are some ways to assist and help and make California more robust. But I didn't think graded stakes committee's job.
No, they need to go with what they see in front of them. I just question if the methodology that they're using has evolved based on how racing has evolved in terms of full crops, in terms of field sizes. Those are things that I think you need to make adjustments for. And I don't know that they've done that properly. And I think California has taken the brunt of that. But I don't think, getting back to what I think was the tone of your question, I don't know that they should just be saying, well, we need to leave that grade 1 because we have to have another grade 1 out there.
That doesn't sound fair.
That's not right.
You cited the example, I think, of the methodology with the Franklin Simpson, when there's a better turf race in the same meeting that isn't restricted. If you told me there was a paperwork error and the other one was supposed to be the grade 1, I'm not saying that's what happened, but I'd believe you.
Right.
Okay. The reason I felt so comfortable going on that tangent before the Horse of the Year discussion is because I think we could do this one in about one word. So yeah. I'll ask it a different way, and I'll say, what other names are you going to put on your ballot behind Sovereignty?
That's a good question. It's funny because, who were the next best quote unquote horses that could be Horse of the Year after him? I think it really depends on who you voted for champion older male. If you voted for Forever Young, you could probably give him a nod. I wouldn't want him to be Horse of the Year, but if you want to make him a finalist, fine.
There's a wacky case to
it's
be
not.
made,
It's whoever are the other two quote unquote finalists or vote getters in this category are obviously not winning. It's obviously going to be Sovereignty.
Purely academic.
It's totally academic. So, maybe Mind Frame, maybe Forever Young, maybe, Nisos, God, you got me. Shisospicy might get some love here, but we know who the Horse of the Year is going to be, and he deserves it.
Good stuff. And it sounds like we'll get to see him run with a little bit of luck.
Yeah.
Fingers and toes crossed. Could be a very exciting 2026. Well, as always, open offer to you. Anytime you want to come on, we'd love to have you. It's always a pleasure. If you have any audio or video projects that are looking for some assistance or a home, reach out, because I learned something every time we talk, and just always a pleasure, my friend.
You're always so gracious to me, Pete. I really appreciate it. Thanks for everything you do with the In the Money podcast and the suite of podcasts that you've got for that you did in 2025. And best to you and your family in 2026.
We'll wrap it up there. Thanks to Jay. Thanks to our founding partners at 10 Strike Racing, our charity partners, Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga. Most of all, thanks to all of you, the listeners and viewers, for watching and making these shows so much fun to do. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment and let us know what we got right, what we got wrong, any thoughts you have on these Eclipse Awards. Always fun to interact in there. This show's been a production of In the Money Media. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.